All right, guys, we are back. We're doing another one of these off-brand versions of the podcast where we actually talk to somebody else other than you guys listen to me yap. So I'm here with my friend and colleague Dal. Those of you who don't know her, she's got a really cool story. I'm just going to tell the story of how we met, kind of through, just like some social media stuff. She was a client in the gym of my good friend Andrew Coates, and she had gotten into coaching, and so followed me and kind of messaged me, and we kind of talked a little bit, and then and we met for the first time at the original or not the original, the second Real Coaches Summit, right? You had come down and we just met and talked, totally hit it off, and have been in contact ever since. And she recently worked with me in my mentorship, and she's a phenomenal coach, but she's got an even better story of becoming a coach. And so with that, I'm just going to kind of like let you talk to me a little bit about your story. I mean, obviously you're a nutrition coach, you're a mom, you live you live above the wall up in the 51st state of the United States of America. We call it Canada. Uh, up in Edmonton, near my friends Dean and Andrew and Chris Little. I actually just got off Chris Little's podcast.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, just I guess first let's start with just talking about what you do, and then we'll kind of get into your backstory.
Hey, well, I'm a nutrition coach now, and so I try to just help, those that are struggling or have struggled like me, with like yo-yo dieting. And I'm not talking, here and there. I'm talking like decades worth of being stuck in that cycle, extreme dieting, or anyone that resonates with kind of what I talk about on social media and my own personal story of, now the term is food noise,
Mhm.
but the popular term. And hey, like it's there, it's a real thing. And just, anyone really struggling and not falling, and those people that have fallen prey to the diet culture, to
Mhm.
thinking it's their fault, to thinking like what you talk about a lot, thinking that they're broken, that they're not capable, they don't have the belief in themselves, they don't trust themselves, all things which I experienced and went through on my own personal journey. So I go deeper with my clients, outside of just calories in, calories out. So I'm
Mhm.
not denying that, not denying it, but it's a multifaceted, you know,
Yeah.
lot of variables, right, happening here.
Simple,
So
not easy, right?
yeah,
And
exactly.
like I always say, is like everyone in the fitness industry and nutrition industry talks about calories in, calorie out, but they don't. They only talk about calories in because, let's be honest, we have almost zero ability to measure calories out because
Yeah.
unless you guys are walking around with doubly labeled water, probably not really super in touch with exactly how many calories you are expending in a day. So I think that's the perfect segue to talk about your personal story, and just kind of let people know the journey that you went on, and I'd like you too, if you don't mind, to also touch on some of the cultural
Yeah.
obstacles that you faced as well. And so, like, I mean, I don't know if you want to start, child. I don't really care. Start where you want, and we'll
Sure.
take it from there.
Yeah, let's start. Let's go back to the very beginning. So for me, I feel like it started really early in childhood, and it was basically not basically. It is. It was my culture. It was society. It was the influences all around me, and it started with really pointing out that I had darker skin. And in our culture, and in many cultures, there's a color hierarchy that exists within which, the fairer you are, the more beautiful you're considered, right? And so, now this didn't come from my parents, but it did come directly and indirectly from my culture and everyone around me, family, friends, etc. And so I learned from a really early age to tie my worth to the way that I looked or how I appeared or what people thought of me. So that perception, right? Like, what will people think? And then on top of that, there's that notion of just anything that you do, how you behave, how you conduct yourself, what you look like, any of it, it's always, well, what will people think? And that's something that is across the board. people of my generation, in my culture, the generations that are growing up now, they all experience this. So that played a huge role growing up. And that really did, like, the words, the things that people said, they really did affect the trajectory of, I believe, the rest of my life, the choices I made, the path that I followed. We think we have free will, but we don't. It's kind of set for us, and we start making decisions and choices according to the things around us and how we perceive things and how we're perceived. And so that played a major role. And I won't get into it, but I can really visualize my life in stages from elementary school to high school, to in my 20s and to this point, and really be able to correlate that to what I experienced and how I got into the yo-yo dieting, the extreme dieting, and why that played such a huge role for over 2 decades in my life.
So when did you start to notice like weight as a problem, or becoming, or was this something that like just started from a very young age and you were like always like, people are like, oh, I was a chubby kid or whatever?
No, I wasn't actually. I was really thin. I was thin throughout elementary school, high school, and high school. So here's where culture, like where other things come into play. I couldn't take my cultural food for lunch to school because it smelled. It was embarrassing. You were made fun of, or at least that was the perception. And well, it was also verbalized as well.
Mhm.
And so we would just go, we would eat chips, drink some pop. That's it. Wouldn't eat all day. I was really active. So I played basketball, like with the school team since grade 2, right up until high school, senior year. And then same thing, like just didn't eat a lot, but we were really active. So didn't understand that correlation either between calories and, exercise and all of that. Then it wasn't until my 20s that I started noticing. And that was when I started university, or moving less, studying more, just up all hours of the night, partying, going into a lifestyle that I hadn't experienced before, because I do come from an Indian background. And so there were more rules. It was more strict. There wasn't as much freedom. And so when I entered my university years, I took full advantage of that. Then I was employed. So I was now bringing in my own money. So we're eating out a lot more. And then the drinking started. And then the weight gain. And that creeped up. It wasn't a lot, 20, 30 pounds, but still a lot for me. And that's it. Then, weddings, other people's weddings, cultural events. And now as the weight is creeping up, now I'm hearing it. I'm hearing it from the community. And in my community, people are very just blunt. Like they will look you up and down. And we've talked about this before. And they will say, oh, you've gained weight. Wow. And they'll also comment when, you've lost weight and, what have you been eating? Or, you think like, what have you been doing? Just negative comments. And, the fact that they feel they have the right to comment on my physical appearance, it's actually really triggering. And I was just back home recently and someone close commented as well, not just on I was eating something and they're like, oh, are you sure you want to eat that? And I can't tell you, Jeb, like the flood of emotions and what I felt in that moment, like it just took me back to where I felt shame and guilt and all of those things. Or even just recently, again, when I was back, I have rosacea, and 3 adults commented and said, what is wrong with your face? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's very typical. And so just like I'd like the audience, and I'm sure your audience resonates with this, but to imagine, and if you don't, imagine what that feels like for somebody.
Well, and that's part of why I wanted to touch on this cultural piece, because that, early on, that was such an interesting discussions that we had. And that was one of the things that, like, early on, I was like, we were just talking and I was like, really lean into this, because this is underrepresented in our, like bottom line is the fitness industry is a very like lily white, like upper middle class, community in general. And again, we talk about it through no fault of their own, but a lot of people they're not exposed to these other cultures. They don't understand. And so, culturally for me, especially, I come from mainly like a Scots-Irish, very like, we don't talk about feelings, let alone mention anything about anybody at all. Like, I mean, it's like it's very, very kind of traditional, like, I mean, if someone is speaking at a high volume, it's like, let's keep that down. We want
Yeah.
to know you don't even talk
Yeah.
loud. And so, I think that it's such an interesting dichotomy because people just wouldn't understand that.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that I was like, your voice is needed if just for the people that are searching for that help, because I've worked with some, and it was really interesting for me because I've worked with a couple of Indian clients in the past. One woman in particular who had immigrated here, in her 30s, I guess, and she talked to me a lot about her past. Like, I mean, it was hard to listen to, and I'm not just talking about comments. I mean, just but like some of the way she was treated. I mean, literally was shunned from her entire family because her husband died.
Right.
And basically, she was considered. She said, like, walking into the room. Now she was Hindi, so like she would walk into the room, and it was like they said that 100 years ago they would have just thrown her on a funeral pyre with her husband, and now they just consider her dead. And like, my brain was just unable to even comprehend that. And so understanding that fundamental difference in culture makes a huge difference in how people are going to deal with, because even you said, like that emotion that flooded back when someone said something. That's what people don't recognize about trauma, is that we think of it, it almost kind of gets dismissed in a way, but it is a very powerful internal physical manifestation of these things that comes back, decades later. And even you who've done all this work, we should probably also
Yeah.
point in what you've done since then, why this is a good story. I forgot
Um,
that part.
yeah, okay. So just quickly to recap, my 2 decades worth of yo-yo dieting. So I have lost in the same, 40, 60, 80 pounds over and over again. And I can't tell you how many times I've lost it, but it just never stuck. And then finally, 3.5 years ago, I made the decision to do things differently. And because of that and everything that I've learned throughout the process, I have lost 120 pounds naturally. And have kept it off, give or take, which
Mhm.
happens. And that's
Sure.
not to say that I haven't regressed. In my journey, I have many times, but that is all a part of it. You talk about it all the time. I learned this from you. It's all practice. It was putting in the reps, and I'm still practicing to this day. Like it's something, a part of me. But I am learning how to, again, everything that you talk about. It's emotional regulation, regulating my nervous system, etc. And obviously this will all tie in together. But really, that's the quick recap. So
Yeah, again, kind of we brushed over the 120-pound weight loss part, because I've worked with a lot of clients over the years who have lost 100 pounds, plus. And one of the things I always say to them is like, listen, before we even discuss anything else further, whether they lost it before me or they lost, working with me, is like, if you maintain that kind of weight loss, like, you've won. So like when you start to get myopic about like, oh my gosh, I gained 5 pounds, it's like, okay, but we let's not blow this too far out of proportion. We have to understand that everything at this point is really gravy. I mean, it is. I mean, just from a metabolic health standpoint, I mean, the difference in the way that your life will last. I mean,
yeah,
alone. I mean, really, like, you're talking
yeah,
120 pounds. I mean, that's a person. That's a whole
yeah,
person,
yeah,
right? And that is going to negatively affect someone's organs, their heart. Like, I mean, it has to, right?
yeah.
But then from it can be so I'm assuming it can be so hard from a psychological standpoint. Again, I always equate. I never had weight problems. If anything, I used to struggle to put on weight. My problems were with alcohol. And
Yeah.
I see all the parallels. Everyone wants to, food's not addictive, whatever. I was like, all right,
Mm.
I don't want to hear it. Like, it's like, I'm one. I mean, I was drinking a gallon of vodka a day, so I think I'm pretty qualified to talk about addiction. And I've been to like probably $175,000 worth of rehabs. So like, I think I learned a few things. And I watch, and it's the same patterns. It's the same issues. It's the same things. It's all built on like a lack of connection and shame and guilt. And but psychologically, it's like there's a fear of the regain, I'm sure. So I guess the question is, how do you, because a little bit of healthy fear I think is okay, but people who have this overwhelming fear are generally people who will have recidivism. They will go back. How do you manage that fear and keep it in a, I guess, regulated state?
Wow. Yeah, you're right. That fear is always going to be there. So, for example, like I still hang on to my big clothes, right? My fat clothes, they're still
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
I know, and I'm trying to figure out why. I know, and I know part of it is that fear of gaining that weight back. And I also know letting go, is going to be a big achievement and like just a step in the right direction for me as
Uh-huh.
well. Um, but how do I manage that? I know it's that self trust, that self belief that I've
Uh-huh.
established over time. And
Uh-huh.
that's just come with, again, the practice, the reps, and just showing up every day, right? Like showing up and listen, like initially, I'm just going to digress a little bit.
Uh-huh.
When I first started, you hear this talk about, hey, if you say you'd die for your kids, would you live for them, right? And like, well, I had kids. I do everything for them. I love them. Like, of course, I would die for them, right? This doesn't mean that. It just means that like I've tried doing it for my kids. I tried. It wasn't going to work. And so nobody could influence me or convince me to do it except for me. But that also meant that I had to, do that internal work and go through that myself. And then eventually, over time, I developed that intrinsic motivation. So, yes, it
Uh-huh.
wasn't there initially. That motivation was different to begin with. But now that intrinsic motivation is my kids. Like, I do it for them as well. And that keeps me going, like, because I know how the trajectory of my life changing that and how that affects them and how that has impacted them and how that will impact them going, future. Um, and so I think it's just everything just comes with time. You have to
Uh-huh.
let go of that timeline, and really trust, just not in the process, but yourself and working with a coach, right? That
Uh-huh.
maybe understands this, like you, as an expert in this field, and something that I'm learning about. I didn't realize that in the beginning when I was doing changing my parenting, for example, going from traditional parenting to more of connection versus
Uh-huh.
correction and just more regulation, right? I
Uh-huh.
learned that it's about regulating myself so that I can co-regulate with my kids. That was huge, and I didn't realize at that time that how much of an integral role that was going to play in my weight loss journey.
We never got taught this shit.
No,
Right? Like
exactly.
I'm 47 years old, and when you said the kind of self-trust thing, it's like I was thinking about, because I don't, that question just kind of came
Yeah,
out of nowhere, and so I started, of course, thinking about myself. It's like, oh,
yeah,
how do I manage that fear? Because like my wife drinks. She's out of
yep,
town. There's a bottle of wine in the fridge. Like I have zero desire. And the thing I talk to a lot of people about is it's like, I don't say I'm never going to drink again anymore because I've said that 1,000 times and drank. And so now I'm just like, I'm not going to drink today, right? And it's
hmm
like I think part of it is that again we're such a goal oriented society, and so everyone's thinking about here's what I mean. I have to think so much about the future, and it's like, yeah, you might get hit by a bus.
yeah,
Like just think about right now. Like what can I do right now? And I love that you brought up that co-regulation piece because I work with a lot of parents, and we work a lot on that regulating our emotions, nervous systems, etc. And I have one of my buddies, a client who's we've been working together for a long time, and I just kind of sent him some breathing exercise stuff just because just more for like kind of an exercise standpoint to improve his CO2 tolerance. And he's like, man, he's like, he's like, I've been watching the difference in like my daughter. He's like, he's
mm-hmm.
like, she's she's almost three. And he's like, and I'm like, isn't it crazy? He's like, cause you and we have to work our ass off. It says she's picked it up in the last 2 weeks. He's like, she's like, got it.
Yeah,
It's like,
I know.
but it's just that thing of like they don't need we don't it's actually not something we need to be taught. We've actually had to relearn it because we've lost tradition, we've lost all these things that I think kind of did it for us. And I love how you, because one of the things I have seen in people who've kind of latched onto this kind of type of work in the way that we do it is a lot of them that are parents are like, I do this shit with my kids. naturally. Or if I don't, I'm like, oh,
Sure.
I gotta remove myself and get to a place where I can do this. Because that, again, when we operate from fear or from anxiety or agitation, we don't make the right choice. We make the safe choice. And so I love that you kind of are able to tie that in. Now, in this journey of like, weight loss, again, it kind of blows my mind that this was just 3.5 years ago, because we met two
Yeah.
years ago. And you had started coaching at that point. And again, like I've told you this, so it's not going to blow your head up, but I'm like, you're a phenomenal coach already. I mean, just the instincts you have and the way you approach people, it's like, and again, I'm very biased because there's a certain way that I like to do things, and when people do that in the same manner, but I see it, and it's just something I don't see in a lot of coaches, and it's phenomenal that you were able to. Now, also, I think we should maybe also dive a little bit into your education too, because I think that
Hmm.
does actually play a lot into it as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have my background in like criminology and sociology, my undergraduate, so I did dabble into some of that stuff, and then really worked within the I don't know how you want to say, criminal kind of sector for a long
Hmm.
time. I also And so that played a big role, just in terms of, dealing with people and just seeing different sides and a lot of that. But
Well, I
then
think from a
really get,
psychological standpoint,
yep,
really, because you're seeing how big a role environment and all these things play into people's lives, and you're looking at these people going like, man, like they were just set up to
yeah,
lose.
yeah, yeah. Environment has, yeah, definitely plays a huge role. And then just really getting into the nutrition part of it. And then it's funny enough, even, when I think around the same time that we met, my sister was just starting her master's in counseling. And
Hmm.
so she just finished her paper. It was on polyvagal as well. And
So
so
cool.
I know it's so cool, like how just everything has intersected and brought me to this point, because it's what I believe in, it's what I've been through, but it's also scientifically backed, right?
Hmm.
And there's just and it's becoming. I see it more now, like even on social media and other kind of fields. I see it a lot more of it, and so. Really going through my own experience really opened up my eyes too, though, to
Yeah,
that
and I
whole
think,
perspective.
and I think that's one of the things that is important for coaches, is that like understanding that our own experiences don't make us less than, right? And again, this isn't about the bullshit vulnerability post people get up to get people to like sign up for their coaching,
Yeah.
but it is about like saying, you know, I can't live your life, but I can say that I'm compassionate for it because I understand what that struggle is. And you don't have, people think that as a coach you have to be this like unflappable, like, stoic, model of perfection. And it's like, no, that's not relatable. That's not helpful. It's helpful to be like, yeah, I understand. This sucks, right? This is hard. Not like, well, you just got to try harder.
Yeah.
And I think that people not only appreciate it, but they need that. Again, we talk about like, whether it's any kind of coaching, counseling, whether it's polyvagal, it doesn't really matter. The most important part is that relationship. And a relationship is not telling people what to do. It's kind of being there with them.
Connection,
Um,
right?
yeah, and so as you've kind of started to grow in the industry, have you started to like work more and more with clients? And your limitation right now is just that you have kids and you don't
Yeah.
have time to do as much as you like. But what have you found? I guess to be what has been the hardest part of doing this for you?
Um, wow. The hardest part. I think I don't know if it's the hardest, but going through your mentorship as well, like realizing that, and I just learned my train of thought there, just totally went out of my head. But oh, it's about not, here we go, it's come back. As a coach, it's not about solving problems or
Uh,
being that person to, provide that solution. But more so really getting curious.
mhm.
And
That'll always
it,
be the hardest part. It's not
so
trying
there
to
you go.
fix it. Yeah, no, that's not going to change.
So that really is because like we've discussed, it's you just want to swoop in and save the day and say, I know, but that's not what it's about. It's really just sitting with your clients. And I think another difficult part for many could be like just listening, just sitting back, just listening and taking it in and really listening to what your client is saying versus already thinking about solutions or this or that. And then just really coming from a place of curiosity, really. That's it. Like that is not an easy skill to master because we're so
No.
used to, right, wanting to provide those solutions. So and who's to say like I'm not, and we don't always have the solutions because something we think that might work for one person may not be for the next person. So yeah, it's really about listening and yeah, so I'm working on that a lot.
It's a hard arc because I started out as a trainer and nutrition coach, and I went straight into the macro world, and it was all about solutions,
Yeah.
tactics, strategies, all these things.
Yeah.
And then so when I went to kind of this practice some years back, when I kind of started developing my model, I swung the other way where I was like, I'm just not going to say anything. And then the beauty about being a coach and not being a therapist is that you can provide, and not that therapists don't, they provide suggestion, but it is one of those things where, you get to be like, okay, cool. Like, do you mind if I offer a couple of things that have worked for other people? And you can give people those tools to work on. And it's finding that balance of
Mm.
each person of whether or not they're going to respond better. And honestly, most people do want, like, because again, I love to ask the questions, but like as we all know, whenever someone asks you a question, we get afraid to say something stupid, right? Like, oh,
Right.
and everyone always like when I coach jujitsu, it's always like, "Hey, this is a dumb question." I'm like, "It's not gonna be dumb. Like, trust me. I mean, we're wrestling in our pajamas. Nothing about this. Nothing about the app. Anything more dumb than what we're doing. It's fine." But like, it's that fear, and so a lot of times the one, and sometimes you'll make a little suggestion, and that'll spark something else that they'll like, "Oh, actually, you know what? I could do this," and so it's finding that balance. So with that said, what is the thing that brings you the most, I guess, satisfaction or joy when you're doing this work?
Honestly, and I'm not going to say, I don't want to sound cliche, but really it is seeing the progress that clients have that are beyond the scale because sometimes that scale weight doesn't even come into the picture at all
Okay.
for months and months and months. And just seeing how I just had this conversation yesterday with a client who's been with me for almost a year. And granted, she does have a lot of weight to lose, but she's lost about 20, 30 pounds and, has been kind of keeping it off. But she said, Dal, I know what I need to do. I understand this. I understand the nutrition part of it. I get all that, but not but. That now she's in a position where she's okay with that, like her expectations, and she understands that. And she's looking at everything else in her life that has changed as a result of this process, as
Yeah.
a result of, wanting to learn, unlearn, wanting to figure out, well, like, how can I get out of these states or what am I going through? Like, okay, when I'm reaching for food, taking that pause, all of these things are not only helping her with her nutrition or choices that she's making, but just in her general life, she's doing things, she's setting boundaries, she's learning to say no, she's again, coming from my culture, this is how the impact that it's had outside of calories and weight loss, because all we hear, so going back to what you said, like the difficult part about coaching, maybe it's everything that you hear, you just hear the numbers and stick to this and do that, but we're forgetting about everything else that the impact that your coaching can have when you start looking at things just outside of, oh, well, she's not losing weight, things aren't working, etc. So for me, that's the greatest joy, is it puts a biggest smile on my face. I'm just like, yes, you went to McDonald's, you thought about it, you got your burger, you got a Diet Coke. That's that change that, you've made since we started. Wow. Like, that's amazing to me. So what seems minuscule, small to others, it's really not. These things are compounding and they're completely changing, someone's life outside of just weight loss. So,
Yeah, and
yeah.
it's I was saying this on the podcast on earlier today, is like we have a tendency to blow out of proportion the things that aren't a big deal and then minimize the things that are. Like I was telling, one of my what I do now, I started journaling again, and I
Yeah.
always now it's like my journaling. I have to say what I each day is I have to say something I'm proud of myself for doing,
Uh-huh.
and it might be doing the dishes, and that might sound like, yeah, that's just called being an adult, and I'm like, yeah, maybe, but like I was at one point in my life I was facing a 25-year prison sentence. I might not have had the opportunity to wash dishes for myself. I might have been washing someone else's dishes, right? But like, and so like just like these little things that to some people might not mean a big deal. Someone that says like, I got a burger instead of a Big Mac, supersized fries and a milkshake.
Yep.
That's a huge deal because that means they were operating from a place where they felt safe and were making those good decisions. And again, I think like one of the struggles I have with talking about the polyvagal stuff is that people hear you say, "Oh, safety," and they're like, "Oh, it's just like you're gonna safe space or whatever," and it's like, no, 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 no. Like this is like existentially, we don't understand the difference between getting attacked by a saber-toothed tiger and having to get up and go to a job that we hate. It's
Right.
like it's the same thing. And I love that you find those things outside because, to your point, I think what becomes so hard is like everyone knows what to do.
Hmm.
That's not the if they needed help with that stuff. I mean, and I got bad news for all the coaches that are just giving people directives. Like AI is going to replace the shit out of you. It might not replace all of us, but at least we got a little bit longer timeline if you're creating good relationships. And that's the challenge is how do we do it? And I think
Right.
that's like to your point is like that's what gets missed is in all the stuff and social media doesn't make it better. Now, when you are in your personal because you obviously lost weight during a time of social media, right? Like so and I'm old, so like so
Yeah.
much of it is like social media feels like such a like I mean, it still feels like a new thing that's just like part of my life now. But for if you were going through this journey with that constant input, how did that influence you in a negative or positive way or affect how you did things?
Oh, geez, yes. So initially, Jeb, I'm old too. No, but
Well,
but
that's
yeah.
what I
So
mean. Is like we use the boomer internet, so like it's fine. Like at least you understand.
yeah, no, it influenced me a lot. First of all, let's just say prior to that, I looked at everyone's stories and posts, and I would live through their, just, oh, compare like what a great life they have. And I wish I had that. And oh my God, all of that, and just constant comparison. And then that would just feed off me then feeling crappy. And then this whole cycle, right? And then when I actually started this journey, I realized what I needed to do. And maybe I was just in a really down state. But what I did was I deleted everyone from my Instagram, all my followers, and I unfollowed everybody. Like I
Mm,
literally just tuned out the noise, shut it off. And then because like there's just a few people that I would that I thought like are going to bring me value and serve me. And you've heard the story, my story with following Jesse, my friend now, and how that helped me initially. And then I met Andrew. And when I met Andrew, I started learning and immersing myself more about nutrition, into nutrition, all of that. And then we talked about how, what to look out for, who to follow. And so I started following accounts that I knew were reputable,
hmm
and that I trusted, and mainly some of the people that obviously he trusted. And from there, that's how I found you or this person or that person. And so now what I was actually hearing, seeing was things that served me. And so, but that didn't happen. Like I didn't reintroduce, so that happened, but I didn't reintroduce family and friends back into my life until I was in a space again, that word where I felt safe. So
Interesting.
until I felt like, okay, I'm doing some work, I'm feeling good, I'm, working on myself. And then I started to introduce my friends and family back because I no longer felt threatened, I guess,
hmm
or no longer was comparing, or at least to the extent that I had been previously. Obviously, now I'm at a point where I really don't compare at all. Um,
hmm
but that took time. And for me, my strategy, and I, talk about this, is just tune it out, shut it off. If it doesn't serve you, don't don't bother. Like if it's not going to help you in your current situation, then why even have that in your life? It just doesn't make sense. So that's how I dealt with it.
It's kind of funny because like you say that and like I'm sitting here thinking of because I'm like yeah social media didn't really because I again like weight stuff like getting
Yep.
bigger or whatever but now I'm thinking about like I kind of went through that same cycle with my business, my practice of
Yeah.
like, and just social media in general. Because again, I have a lot of my friends have a ton of, and like I get this thing all the time. Oh, you should have so much more followers. Your content, da da da. And then I would get into this thing of like, well, why does this person who just spouts bullshit have all? And then I would get, and it was the same thing. And it was like, finally, it was like, first of all, you don't actually want that. Like that's the funniest
Yeah.
thing is that's not actually what I want out of life. I don't like popularity. I'm such a hipster. Like I hate it. I think it's like to be popular would be the worst thing that could ever happen to me. But if there's still that part of me that's like wants the acceptance and wants to be,
Yeah.
thought of in a certain way and like and somehow and it was the same thing. I had to like and that was like my therapist. She's I we probably spent a year and a half just talking about like social media, and it was probably
Oh
like she was
gosh.
probably
Yeah.
like, Jesus, you give it a rest. Like, why do you care? You're fine. Like everything's good. Like your life is good. Why are you worried about this thing? But it really took a lot for me to get
Yeah.
over that. And I'm thinking about that, and I really hadn't thought about it like that in that same context of like, wow. And again, this stuff is. We think about nutrition and fitness as this like monolithic thing, but it's
Uh,
everything's the same. It's all the stuff.
Yeah. And we're
Um,
not immune to it either, right? That just goes to
no,
show
oh
you
God,
we're
no,
just like
oh
everyone
God,
else. And I see it now with myself in this space, in the coaching space, and now like with other coaches, and we follow a lot of coaches. And I'm just like, now I'm even starting to just tune that out as well because so much of it doesn't align with me. And really at this point, all I care about is what aligns with me for the most part, right?
yeah,
But
and for the most part, none of it's really helpful.
no, it's not.
Like most of my social media is just like me like liking my friends' posts,
Yeah.
and like half the time, like even if it's not a good, even if I'm like I don't agree with that, I like it anyways. Because God forbid, because that's the problem is like I'm so direct, and so like I'll like just straight up tell them like, hey, this isn't right, and then it turns into like this like argument. The best is like when I left Stronger You and like Mike Dolan, we would get into it in the comments, and people were like, and then we'd be in our DMs, be like, people probably think we fucking hate each other, and it'd
Yeah.
just be hilarious. We would be like going at it, and then on the side being like, yeah, this is good, huh? And but it's like but I forget too is that people don't. I'm one that always likes to like I don't like being challenged, but I do because it makes me go back and
Yeah.
think and then rethink my position. But like most people just want to stay stuck in what they believe is true and what their experience tells them is true. And as much as I want to come in and be like, I don't. It's like now, it's like, what's the point? And I still get into it occasionally and get caught, but like, and I even try to do it, and I've done it now. Of like, oh, can I do this in a softer way that agrees with them? That makes, and then they just come back and be like, no, and you're like, but dude, this is the dumbest thing I've ever read, and I actually said I didn't tell you it was the dumbest thing I ever read. I was like actually really nice about it, but
But
it
now
doesn't
I
really
won't.
work, and
Yeah.
what is it? The thing I thought about is like at the end of the day, like there's certain like these like kind of influencer people. I'm like, oh God, I hate everything about. And it's like, dude, they're not target like they're not hurting you. And then, if anything,
Right.
they're actually creating my future clients, which is a terrible way to think of it, but you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Hey, I see it.
it
Yeah.
is. And so I think like again, we're kind of doing this. We're doing this like kind of like as like a shorties, but which is funny because my podcast with just me is only a half hour anyways. When I'm talking, it feels like it's 4 hours long. This feels like it's only
Probably.
been like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, but so I guess like kind of to kind of do a good like kind of wrap up because again, most of what I want to do is I really want for nothing else I want more people who don't know you to know you and to follow your Instagram and to to look to you for coaching because again I think you're a phenomenal coach and I would send my family to you and that's
Oh,
that's what I always
wow.
say is like that's always my biggest sell on anyone. It's like would I send my family or friends? I shouldn't say family because some of my family I would do just to be that could be a but
Nightmare. No.
I guess the thing
Ev-
is where are you at like now and thinking about going forward because as we've talked plenty of times it's like as once your kids are
Mhm.
older and you have the time that you can dedicate more fully but in this time where you are in your path which again it just blows my mind that it's such a short amount of time because I'm like oh yeah she's probably been doing this for like 10 years where do you see yourself kind of in the next and I don't even need like long term but just kind of where do you want to go next like what is it you want to do with your practice in kind of the next phase.
Yes. Well, I want to be able to help more people for sure. And so, like you said, when, my season of life allows for that, and it's not too far out, but in the interim, just really continuing to help those and practice those that trust me and see something in me and really believe in me as well. And then eventually, and just learn more about this field, like this, just the nervous system regulation and all of that, because I am like you, a little bit biased too, but
Hmm.
I strongly, strongly am a proponent and believe in it. And, it's worked for me. And so as a coach, I would like to spread that message. And even in my own posts and writing, I try to bring that out. And just that's what I want, like, my audience to see,
Hmm.
that this is, yeah, it's about weight loss, but it's also about so much more. And I want to really just come from a place of like just compassion. And I want my future clients to learn that as well for themselves. And so, really, in the next year or so, is just to build up to that point where I can really open it up and just, help as many people as I can. So I'll do what I can in that time frame, like learn more, immerse myself more in the things that matter to me, while still not like, and I'll be honest, while still not foregoing like my values, as far as my family is concerned,
Oh,
and how much time, I spend with family and just in life in general. So kind of practice what I preach, right?
and that's it. And that honestly is probably one of the hardest things. And I see so many people get lost in, and I think why there's so much burnout in this field is because people forget what's important. And again, it becomes like a money thing, and it's like in it. Because I think one of the hardest things in this is the bombardment of everyone trying to turn this into like the money maker, and it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I mean, can you make a good living at this? Yeah, but that is, and if, and again, I'm not like judging anyone who is in it from like, it's fine. I don't really care. But for me, the important part, I was sitting with my wife having dinner last night, and I started coaching jujitsu 2 nights a week. So now, I get home late. We eat a little bit later, and some nights she eats without me. Like if I'm, getting home at like 8:30 or whatever. But I was like, it's become vitally important to me that we sit down and have dinner together at night. It's just a thing, and then I see like some of our family that has kids, and like they kind of like they'll come in, like everyone just kind of eats all over the place, and like and I'm like, oh man, and I was saying traditions, as
Yeah.
I always talk about rituals, and like we've lost so many of them, and I think that we talk about like the polyvagals evidence based, and it's like, yeah, but we have to have these evidence based things to
Yeah.
just remind people of shit that they knew intrinsically 100, 200 years ago because it was built into our culture, and those things are being lost. And I think there is a huge benefit in coming from a culture that still holds on to a lot of tradition is and why it's so important, to have these voices in the space because, traditional like American like and I shouldn't say traditional like but the working where both parents are working American like there's not much of that left. There's not and there's not this and it's easy to be like, oh, food is fuel, and it's like, no, it's not. Like food
No.
is everything. It's our entire being in so many ways.
Well,
And
yeah. And speaking of tradition, though, like just to give you an example, like when you hear that saying, it takes a village to raise a family, it's fucking legit. There's a reason why, because I know in my culture, so like not everything is bad. Obviously, there's some things that, weren't the greatest for me. But, when you have a baby, the mom's mom will either, the mother will go stay with her mother with the baby for like a
mhm,
couple of months. Or, like, for example, my mom came and stayed with me for weeks. Um, and so, tradition, rituals, things like that, like, yeah, we have lost them. And so, why did I go through so much postpartum? Well, I'm sure that played a role too, not having the support, living in these nuclear families now, away
mhm,
from friends and family, all of that. So, yeah, so all of these things, like you said, it's really important to understand culture in that sense too, just to tie it back up, this whole thing up. It's like, well, these things contribute to
yes.
everything.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean,
So,
we had this discussion with my wife because her mom is she's got a little dementia and she's kind of struggling, and the conversations keep being like, well, we're gonna have to find like how, and I told mom, I was like, listen, well, like, we'll get a tiny house or put an addition on or whatever, and like just bring her
yeah.
here, and like we don't have kids or anything, and she's like, coming from me, that sounded like really like whoa, but I'm like, like we owe that
Yeah.
to the generations before, and it's like, and again, this is not a values thing. Other people,
No.
do it as they do, but for me, it just feels like, um, we've gone so far away from it, and we wonder why we're miserable. And not like we should all be
Yeah.
like, drinking raw milk and eschewing vaccines or something, but like we do want to, like, I don't know. Again, the compassion, the empathy, the
Yeah.
connection. Again, we talk about it all the time. It's all, everything's about relationships, and when we eschew that for money or influence or power, it's like, yeah, of course you're miserable. So yeah, so I think with that, we also should mention you have a new podcast coming out
Oh,
very soon.
yes. It's unnamed, but we're going to
I think
be
that's a perfect name. Actually, I
unnamed.
guarantee someone already has unnamed. Like, I bet you
Right.
that's already out, because that's actually a really great name.
I should look that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my colleague and friend, Karmi, her and I both teamed up. Again, we met at a conference 2 years
Yep.
ago. And so that will be released at the end of next week or the beginning. So just another week or so. We've already done a lot of pre-recording. So we have like 8 episodes under our belt. Really
Oh
excited for
God.
it. Yeah,
Because I
yeah.
saw the clip. I saw the clip, and I figured you guys just finished that one. That's awesome.
No. Yeah.
Okay, so then if people, obviously you guys should check out the podcast when it comes out, but in order to find that, so where do they find you?
Oh, so they can just Instagram. That's where I'm most active, and it's Nutrition Coaching by Dal.
That's
That's it.
and
Simple.
I will, yeah, and I'll put it in the show notes or whatever.
Yes. Well, thank
Yeah,
you.
I hope. I'm so terrible at it. Like, I do that. Like, like literally my show notes for my own stuff is like literally whatever Riverside tells me it is, and I just copy and paste. I'm the
Yeah.
worst. Like, I like doing the stuff, but I don't like doing any of the, like, the work associated with
The
like
back
the busy
end.
work. Yeah, like
Yeah.
the homework. When I was a kid and teachers give me homework, I'd be like, "This is stupid. I already read the book. Give me the test. I don't want to do homework. Like, what's that? That's
Well,
dumb."
think about it, Jeb. You're wearing like 50 different job hats, right? Like you're not just a coach.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but yeah, still, I should probably have I should have a better attention to detail in some things. But all right, well, Dal, thank you so much again. We've been on here for 50 minutes. I thought it
I
feels like
know.
10. But yeah, so again, I really appreciate you, and honestly, I really appreciate how you show up, because I also have to say, my mentorship being created was because you pressured me, because I had been talking about it, as I do. I talk about stuff and then I went and follow through. And you were like, "Hey, I really think this is a thing." And I'm like, "Okay." And we met just because you really put yourself out there, went to these seminars where, in a business where you didn't know anybody except for Andrew, and like, it was like, I mean, just huge balls to like go into that place, and then the next year you come back and you know everybody, and it's like, but I think it's a really good lesson for other people, because they all think that I'm gonna hide behind this computer screen and I'm gonna get famous on Instagram, and it's like, well, first of all, maybe, but who cares about that? Like, you can all of a sudden go get an entire, like, group of friends and people you love and care about, and like, from
Yeah.
just going and putting yourself out there. So yeah, so again, thank you for the way you constantly show up. And guys, if you don't, go follow her on Instagram, because you'll see a lot of big things coming out in the next few years, and if you're not there now, then you won't get to see it when it happens. So
Oh, I
Dal, thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
Thank
And with
you.
that, I'll see you guys next time.